Welcome, everybody. I am extremely glad the way our Insight series is shaping up. We are having eminent business leaders coming to us and talking about their experiences. We have a lot to learn from that and look into how we are managing today so that our tomorrow can be better. Today we have with us Mitesh Manubarwala. Mitesh is a strategic HR leader, having worked across various domains and has managed workforce across varied geographies, and be it India, rest of APAC, Europe, Americas. He has managed so many cultures, matrixed organizations, and of course, all the complexities that can come with that. But what he must have ensured is business success. That is, business getting the value from robust HR practices. So welcome, Mitesh.
Good morning, Sudeshna. Thank you so much. Your very generous introduction brings a smile to my face. Fantastic way to start the morning. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It is a great start for us too. And like, just what we mentioned about, it's like working in a global organization with such a diverse workforce. Cultures, people are so different from one another. So what has been your experience so far?
I think the biggest learning for me in this space has been the fact that diversity in itself is a huge strength. If you look at how the entire business landscape is evolving, um, customers are more demanding.
Mm-hmm.
They demand more in terms of agility. They demand more in terms of insights into their own business. They expect customers expect you to know and understand their business, be proactive. There is also an element of, therefore, companies transitioning from a task-based to a knowledge-based kind of way of working. Now, all this requires organizations to be more agile, more globally collaborative, build deeper networks, ensure that their own internal processes are in place, systems, process, technology, people, everything works in sync. If you look at it from a behavior standpoint, one of the key behaviors then is the ability to bring forth different perspectives, challenge perspectives, and look at different ways of working so that we can constantly innovate internally.
Yeah.
One of the key levers to that actually is diversity. And diversity is often misunderstood, as gender, sexual orientation, etc. But it's also broader. I think these are key facets of diversity, but diversity is also about diversity of geography, background, and so on and so forth. In my experience, as I have, had the opportunity of working with people across the world, there is a huge amount of learning that comes from from working with people across. What that means is that if you go in with an open mind and a learning mindset, you can actually identify strengths and adopt some of those. And it's not just in terms of process and practice, it's also in terms of behavior. Right? I think that's one of the big enablers of business success. And study after study has proven that companies which focus and do well on diversity, equity, and inclusion, it has a deep and positive impact on their bottom line and their financial results. So I think that's where this whole aspect comes in. It's directly linked to success, but not just short-term success, but to enabling the ability to innovate, it also then enables long-term success and longevity for an organization.
I think very well said. I mean, we are seeing these challenges which organizations are facing, as you're saying, like right from how customers are asking for things have changed. It's no longer like, they are very easily satisfied, but not that they were ever, but still the way it is being understood by the companies, and they need to kind of, be agile and work around, and your global workforce gives that various ideas, various way of doing it. That's like, very well put. So how do you think HR has coped up with this kind of change with how the organization requires customers?
I think we are evolving as well.
Mhm.
Uh, of course, from a long term, if you go way back, then it was typically a labor relations management kind of thing, and then we evolved into something that manages HR processes, etc. I think the people function of today, the HR function of today, um, the biggest role that that it can perform in an environment which is global, which is highly matrix, complex, requires collaboration, formal and informal networks, is to enable all of these things.
Right.
And there are various levers you can pull. But before you can pull all those levers, an HR professional needs to understand the organization, understand the market, understand the customer landscape. Once we understand all of these things, uh, and not just have a seat on the table, but have a seat on the table as a business leader, a business leader who is an expert on people related matters, it then allows us to pull many levers. Some of those levers are structural, organizational structure, design, uh, talent exercises, and so on and so forth. Because of the way that the any HR function operates, we also have an end-to-end view of the organization.
Hmm. Hmm.
So you would have heard, for example, of something called organizational network analysis. But in a very simple way, even without using fancy tools and systems and all that, because of this end-to-end view, the HR leader is actually the one who can identify where networks are working, where collaboration is working, and where it's not working. That then links
Mhm.
into various different, levers that I mentioned, and there are many more like
Absolutely.
learning and capability building and all that. So for me, at this point in time, the biggest role that an HR leader can perform is to have a view holistically of the business, understand the complexities involved, and then work with the other leadership in the company to actually try and simplify that complexity as much as possible and foster collaboration. There are two ways to success. The ideal way to success is when all your processes are in place and everything is working like a well-oiled machine. In the real world, what I've seen is it's a mix of both. Especially when you're in a growth phase, the
Yeah.
well-oiled machine will never be in place. What works is the intent and the mindset of people. And it's amazing what people can achieve working globally and not just in person, right? Working globally, virtually, and so on and so forth, if there is an intent to succeed.
Think that kind of speaks. So we heard like how organizations are evolving. How do you think leadership is faring up with this? How are leaders doing? I mean, there it is like customers are demanding. So yeah, my result, everything is like I have to be on top of it, which I needed to be, but I need to be on top of people, not leaving also, getting the right people also. So how do you think have leaders evolved, or what challenges do you see there?
I think the evolution in itself brings challenges because if you look at how companies operate today, a, a leader can no longer exist in the perform phase stage. And what I mean by perform is just look at
You
KPIs of
just
the team and
Mhm.
improve those KPIs. A leader now needs to think forward, be forward looking, needs to then look in terms of what is possible, not just from from a continuous improvement perspective, but from a transformation perspective. Now, if that has to happen, a few of the traits that I have seen in successful leaders. The first one is a leader doesn't exist for themselves. They exist for the team. We call it
Yeah.
servant leadership. But very simply, what it means is that you don't put you put your organization first and your people first. If you can do that, I have typically seen those leaders being highly successful.
Hmm.
Some of the behaviors or some of the cultural traits that good leaders today evolve, and this is where the challenge arises as well. One of them is psychological safety. Are you okay to let go, but not let go to the extent where the team does whatever it wants, but to provide a safe space where they can learn and fail? So
Yeah.
be agile, right? Work with minimally
Right.
viable products. Um, and fail fast, learn fast, come and then evolve, iterate, and so on and so forth. Hear different perspectives, be okay to hear out disagreement, and so on and so forth. That's the first one. The second one is, how do you foster curiosity and a culture of learning? This is difficult because, especially in the current business cycle, with high inflation and therefore the measures that all the world banks are taking, the economy probably on a downturn, GDP rates not as high as they were a few years ago. What that means is globally there's a lot of pressure on cost. When there's pressure on cost, typically that means that the amount of mind space available to encourage learning reduces. So these are moments of truth for leaders, right? Because if you only focus on the short term, you may miss the larger opportunities in the long term. But at the same time, you have to continue to motivate the team so that they focus on the short term and continue to stay engaged in difficult times. And that's why it's important through every business cycle for a leader to continue focusing on inculcating this curiosity and leadership mindset. The third trait, in my view, is empathy. And empathy is not sympathy, of course. It is just taking a very human approach, and not just towards your team, but that includes the larger organization, peers. For me, it's also taking an empathetic approach to our leaders sometimes. But it's also towards customers, vendors, the external stakeholder. There is always a background that people come from when they're giving you a difficult time, or there's something happening and I think that's one of the key behaviors that I've seen great leaders display. What that results in is actually a deeper understanding of where a person is coming from. So it's actually, and it fosters then a very solution-oriented approach.
True, absolutely. But like like you are working in agile environments where being agile, being innovative is a must. So do you think that room of failure is given, that it's also something like you want the results, but yeah, they should fail, and that safety which we were talking about, but does that happen? Do the leaders are tolerant to that?
I think it happens more than it used to happen. It's always going to be an evolution, right?
Correct.
Is there any organization that exists where there's 100% psychological safety, room to fail, and so on and so forth? Of course not. We are all human beings and we have our own shortcomings. So it's more about continuously improving on that path. It's not 100%. I think the big role that HR leaders can perform in this space is to slowly nudge the company towards having this as an integral part of their culture.
That it's okay to fail.
It's okay. Look, it's if you look at different leadership styles are an outcome of different circumstances.
True.
If things are falling apart, then you can't be too democratic. Sometimes you have to be autocratic, give instructions, and so on and so forth. At least what I do is, in those situations, I try and start with the why. Explain the why, set expectation. This is how we're going to operate. This is the reason why. And I think most teams are fine with it. But sometimes when things break, it's because, in fact, very often things break when teams don't understand the why.
Yeah.
And leaders start with the what and the how. Without the context, it then becomes a scenario where people feel stressed out, disengaged, and so on and so forth. But in my experience, if you explain the why, sometimes even when people are working very long hours and they get it, I have seen fantastic outcomes.
True. I think, like as you rightly put it, Kay, but how we are like in crisis, how we behave when are we demanding, when are we okay with things. So all these sets the pace, Kay, how diverse your organization is in terms of country cultures. You build that own organization, starts functioning in that culture. So how important it is to let the culture take its own shape, and how important it is for leaders to be fashioning it in a particular manner.
It's that zoom in and zoom out. So you have to zoom in, but at times you have to zoom out just to look, culture is not something that, at least I believe that culture is not something where you can say, okay, this is a project plan to arrive at this culture. But there are these nudges, and a lot of these nudges are around leadership behavior. So it depends on the kind of leaders that you hire, but also around, constantly ensuring that they receive the right messages. But it's also a lot of structural things. For example, if you look at diversity,
Mm-hmm.
does your interview process have inherent biases? Right? And now there are tools which can actually run a diagnostic to see if there are gender biased words being used in job descriptions, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very prevalent and biased. And these are things most companies and most leaders are not aware of. So I think these are some of the, just taking a step back. So there are set of structural nudges, and then there are set of behaviors. But then if you constantly ensure you zoom in, but also zoom out from time to time, just to ensure that, we are headed in the direction that we want to head, in line with the company's values, the company's leadership behaviors as we expect them, and so on and so forth. That's typically how I've seen things work.
I completely get, and as you say, there is no a set recipe to kind of do these things right, because it's constantly people going to do and leaders going to demonstrate. So it goes like that. But sometimes to do something for a very and to make it stick. Sometimes it requires a little more time. So do you think the companies have that patience, or quick fixes are, as we say, "Okay, hey, I want it faster," you know?
If you pull out a list of the 500 largest companies in the world and then filter out the ones who existed for 50 years or more, you will see that all of them have a set of values which have existed for a number of years, and the company truly echoes those values. And they
Mm-hmm.
could be whatever it is, but at least 8 out of 10 employees will know what the values are,
Mm-hmm.
what the expected behaviors are. Right? And I think that's how it sticks. It doesn't stick because there's a program and we put up a few posters. Those are enablers. But what
Mm-hmm.
actually makes it stick is when the rubber hits the road. For example, if you have a potential customer,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe there is some ask from the customer which is a gray area or not in line with your values. Let's say you have to do a customer implementation or set up a site, and maybe you're not fully confident about the safety of the site. What is
Mm-hmm.
the decision the leader makes at that point in time? Does the leader feel safe to make that decision, knowing that we might lose some revenue? And that's where the company construct and the culture of the company comes in. But those bold decisions then reinforce, and those set examples for the next line of leadership to follow as well. So that's the
True.
way I've typically seen these things evolve. Good behaviors feed more good behaviors.
Mm.
Poor behaviors then have the contrary effect. Finally, it all boils down to what kind of leadership you have.
Sure, surely, absolutely. Uh, Now with the new age, the technology, a lot of technology coming in. So, how have you seen? You have you like till now you have spoken quite a bit on how it can be effectively used. So, do you think like in enhancing, because it creates a lot of anxiety at one end, like oh, like what it is going to happen, and how digitalization and is going to take away things, but on the other, the enablers, do you think it has kind of really, and how HR is using effectively these things?
See, I think just to address the piece around job loss, uh, the nature of work is definitely going to change, but it has always changed. There was a point
Mm,
in time when at Ford Motors, people used to, there was before that, there was no assembly line. People used to stand and do things. There was an assembly line then. If you go to a modern factory, you'll hardly find 5 people, right? But people have found jobs, or other
mm,
jobs have been created. What's important is that globally, as long as growth is happening, and it is happening, sometimes it slows down, sometimes it picks up. Um India, for example, is an extremely exciting place to be at this point in time.
true.
So I'm not too worried about job loss, but what is important is that each person thinks about how they can constantly evolve and add skills to themselves. from an HR standpoint, I think we're on the cusp of um, adopting technology in the true spirit. The reason I say that is, if you look at it, there's a huge ask from the people function or the HR function now to operate in a manner which is more scientific, which is more data driven,
Yeah.
um, and also where there is a lot of self-service, democratized learning, and so on and so forth. If all these things have to happen, and they need to happen because the HR function cannot be a dinosaur in the room, right? What that means is then we will, over a period of time, see the HR function then getting into those spaces more, where there is the AI element or the technology element, whether it's machine learning, AI, whether it's simple platforms and tools, are an enabler. But there is an aspect of understanding human behavior, understanding organizational networks, structures, business models, etc., which will not cover. So there will be some functional areas which will get more digitized and automated, but there will be other opportunities that will get created as well. So I think it's going to be more of a rebalancing. The reason I said we are at the cusp is because our adoption has been slower, but the way that the business is evolving, it's kind of mandating us to now adopt these technologies. And I see that happening more and more. People analytics is evolving as a
Yes.
field, but then people analytics again is an enabler. So it's more about the larger HR function than
What do you do
beginning to
with it? I
use
mean,
what
yeah.
people analytics is, or the, whatever data and analytics are being made available. So that's the
Yes.
way it's
Yes.
working.
Yes. Yes. So, like, professionally, we heard so much, but what about Mitesh? What keeps Mitesh going? What has been the, like, what has been your, biggest learning, which keeps you going?
Interesting question. I think I don't think there's been a single moment of learning, but somehow one of the biggest reflections that I've had in recent years is the fact that a lot of things that seem significant at a certain point in time, and I say this because at this point in time, all of us are under stress, under pressure. We feel that the world's problems rest on our shoulder. Things go wrong, and I see a lot of people suffer health problems as well. Um, my biggest reflection has been the fact that if you look at some of these 10 years down the line, they seem very small. Not only do
Yeah.
they seem small, but um, if you look at it from a banking or a financial perspective, right, success is almost seems like it sits on the debit side. And what I mean by that is the value of that success continuously diminishes. So people always try and aim for success. You get your promotion, you get a salary hike, and so on and so forth. But the joy that comes out of it somehow diminishes. It's exactly the reverse for failure, because that's like a credit, that's like a savings account, and then you keep having interest added to it. Personally, for me, I think uh, the most fond memories that I have professionally and personally are actually moments which have been difficult, where there have been failures, and therefore I always
True.
have a challenge when someone asks me to talk about success, because I don't remember, because they don't matter as much. Yes, I remember I got a promotion so and so year, but big deal. Got a salary hike in so and so year, maybe big deal, because that's spent on a million various options that we have because of the global economy that we exist in. But it's those failures that stay with you, and they're constant sources of learning, but for me they're constant sources of joy as well.
True, true. It's somehow like, at that moment, the people around, I think you never, those people become very, very, I think a team which goes through a difficult time, I can well understand that. I resonate that very much here as well. So, so that's great to hear. So if we are talking about making organizations have for leaders for you to make them future ready.
I think we discussed that in bits and pieces, so I'll just
Mhm.
summarize. I think the first piece is to re-examine their roles themselves. Right? A true leader needs to now build the team, empower the team so that they can stop looking downwards and sideways and start looking upwards. And I don't mean upwards in terms of promotion. I mean upwards in terms of the kind, elevating the kind of work that they perform and or the value that they create. Moving from a performance kind of way of working to a transformational way of working. And
Right.
that then involves a plethora of things, right? Like understanding the customer, the business, understanding the internal organization, what are the trends, and so on and so forth. So that's the first one. Then the second one I spoke about, which is uh, fostering agility, psychological safety, curiosity, a culture of curiosity and learning, and all of these go hand in hand. And then, very importantly, empathy. For me,
Right.
these are some of the key cornerstones for the leader
For
of tomorrow.
True. And I think it cuts like, any very business leader we can speak of. But when you are in an organization or you have been, I mean, or you're part of a setup where you see these things not there, then how, as a HR function, that can kind of, really support to get the organization towards that?
Yeah, I think there's some things that are are absolutely are non-negotiable. Behavior which is in line with values, respect for teams, things like that. One of the key things and opportunities when you're hiring a leader, or when you're promoting a leader, right? Then there are these various levers, enablers that you can pull. And honestly, in today's world, it's very easy. For example, learning and
Mhm.
curiosity. A business leader cannot be a business leader in their space alone.
Yeah.
Right? A marketing leader, for example, cannot be a marketing leader in isolation and just do the market analysis and so on and so forth. They also then need to be technologists, for example, need to understand the basics of how people operate, and
Mhm.
so those kind of things, right? So I think a lot of it boils down to the kind of leaders that you have in the organization, and obviously then you bring in the infrastructure, the tools and materials, so as to speak, to enable them and help them evolve and be better at what they do.
Okay, and any advice you have for your fellow HR folks as to what they need to kind of really gear up in this in this future, which we are saying, the ever-changing future, which is to come? Any advice for them?
I would say stay curious, keep learning, and don't limit the learning only to your specific field. Understand the external levers, the larger microeconomic situation, keep an eye on the market. One of the things that I find very effective is to just have a network and constantly interact with that network. So there is knowledge that you share, but there's knowledge you receive. One
Yes.
of the things that's changing from a learning standpoint is, especially post the pandemic, we are learning more and more from the learning is becoming more tangible. So one of
Yeah.
the things that a lot of companies are adopting is learning through what we call gambas.
Yes.
They're called gambas in some parts of Asia. They're called go-sees, but basically it
Mhm.
means that you actually go and see how, for example, a task, a process is executed instead of
Yes.
sitting in a classroom.
Mm.
Okay? But that's the first one. The second advice that I would have is it's extremely important to take care of your health physically and mentally. And pressures are going to keep increasing, especially as we go global, as we continue collaborating globally. It means that the opportunities come from various new avenues, but so does the stress. And what I mentioned earlier, which is, it's never the end of the world. It
Yes.
just seems that way. It's important to take a deep breath and just keep moving on. um, a lot of professionals that I interact with, um, I find that sometimes they have lost perspective of what's important in life. And if you look at your life holistically, it's sometimes very easy to get entangled in growth and focus on the organization and your job, because there is an instant gratification that you get out of it. But from a more holistic standpoint, I would encourage everyone to take a look at their lives and see if they are also then balancing with what else is important and ensuring that they maintain that balance. Because at the end of the day, what will matter is, how well have you maintained that balance, and have you holistically then touched upon all these things that are important for you in your life, whether it's health, whether it's family, could be money, career, job, contribution towards society, and so on and so forth.
Anything else you would like to say, Mitesh? Any question you would want me to ask you?
No, I think it's been fantastic. And I particularly appreciate the last question, because it touched upon something that's very close to my heart.
Yeah,
So I would just like to thank you for setting this up, giving me the opportunity to come here and share my perspectives. I hope that the people who watch this recording gain value from it. And then if you have any follow-up questions, or if you receive any questions, I would always be happy to kind of
absolutely.
answer.
Absolutely, we would be definitely going back. I think today we can kind of, you like the last three questions was sort of, you summed it up very well. But we are leaving today with a very important message on well-being. And well-being as a total well-being is, don't just kind of take a stock of things which are important, because today with what looks very, very important is maybe that urgent thing, and not the thing which would be like, will be affecting you tomorrow at all. So take a stock of things now and then, and don't lose perspective. And because after that time does not come back, that time won't come back. So live through, and keep a good balance of it. And then, like, the transformation is ever, like, it is going to happen, and be a part of it, and go with it, with the way the evolution is taking us, or the evolution of the whole organization leaders are happening. I think you just kind of ended it very well, Mitesh.
Life is short. Have fun.
Yes, the rest falls in place sometime, right? Like, the rest
Absolutely.
falls in. So thank you, Mitesh, for coming to this program. And viewers, if any question you have for Mitesh, please reach back to us. We will answer them, and keep watching the space, because we'll have more leaders speaking about their experience. And trust me, as like today, we will have a lot to learn. And with that note, goodbye from all of us. Thank
Thank you
you.
so much, Sudeshna.